And we are ready to begin. Thank you so much, all of you who are here in person. On behalf of the Alumni Association, I welcome you to Big Data, Opportunities, Challenges, and Implications for Privacy. I'm Steve Sieversod. I'm the Communications Manager in the Office of Alumni Relations. And I'm very excited to say, for those of you who do not know, that this panel discussion live here at the SUNY Global Center is being webcast. And we have about 50 to 60 students that I'd like to say hello to on the Binghamton campus who are in our brand new Alumni Center watching us as part of a Cool Connections Hot Alumni event. So we're very glad that they are with us, and I would like to thank all alumni who are watching us on the live web stream. Very excited to have you as part of this program. I'd like to recognize briefly the Alumni Association's Communications Committee, with whom I work to put on this event, and Gary Kabul was part of the preparation for this event as well, and he'll be our moderator. I'll introduce him in just a second. But members of the Communications Committee helped us with choosing the topic and the panelists, and we have a few members of the committee here in person. Christina Pilano, just wave or stand up if you'd like. Tamara Reiner. And Rick Chrisberg, our chair, was here at the event a little bit earlier this evening, but was not able to stay because he had a prior commitment. Was certainly instrumental in putting this event together. We have a great panel, and Gary is going to tell you about these wonderful people in just a little bit. Our moderator is Gary Kabul, Alumni Association Vice President and a partner at Davis & Gilbert. He's a lawyer in intellectual property, social media, and has practice and experience in all sorts of areas that tie in very well to the topic that we're going to come away very enlightened on within the course of about 1 hour. So we're very pleased to have him as the moderator. There'll certainly be time for your questions toward the end after the prepared questions have been dispensed with, so please feel free if you have a question. And if you can remember, please turn on your microphones so that way they can pick up the sound of your question for those who are watching at home online. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Gary Kabul, a two-time graduate of Binghamton University, member of the class of 1990, got his MBA in 1992, and is the moderator for tonight's event. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Steve, and thanks everyone for coming here. And for those of you, actually like me, who've never been to the SUNY Global Center before, this is actually pretty cool. It's a nice place. And for those of you watching online at the Alumni Center, very glad that you're able to join us. And for those of you in the room who have not been to Binghamton and seen the new Alumni Center, it's incredible. They turned the old O'Connor dorm in Dickinson into a brand new, beautiful, gorgeous Alumni Center. So please make a trip up there to see that. So I want to quickly introduce the panelists, let you know who's here, and I'm going to have them sort of introduce themselves and tell you a bit about their background. So first, immediately to my left is Jonathan Espiritu, who's from the class of 2003. And then to his left, David Berkowitz, class of 2000. And then to his left, Leah Sheena, class of 2006. And at the end, Elliot Hoff, class of 1991. Almost beats me, I'm class of 1990. So you've got their bios in the books there, but I thought it'd be helpful to hear from your fellow alum, what they currently do and how did they get here, and maybe what they did in Binghamton, and what was their transition to get to where they are today. So why don't we start with you, Jonathan?
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks, Gary. Hey everyone, my name is Jonathan Espiritu, class of 2003. Currently I'm Senior Corporate Counsel at Media Math. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the advertising industry, I work for what's called an ad tech company. Media Math is a company that helps connect publishers to advertisers as well as agencies in order to serve programmatic advertising. And that's really what you think of as targeted advertising, where ads that are a bit more relevant to you specifically are sent to you. The example that they gave us on our first day was, when you're looking at a pair of shoes online and all of a sudden they follow you throughout the day, you'll see them throughout the day, and by the end of the day you buy the shoes. That's usually, that's the type of advertising that we're talking about. So at Media Math, I'm on the legal team there, and I'm in charge of the commercial agreements. And basically I like to say that I bring in all the money. So I negotiate all the agreements that brings in all the money. Really signing up clients, signing up publishers, signing up agencies in order to work with our platform, which is a very exciting space to be in. And a little bit about my background beforehand. While at Binghamton, I was very active in a lot of organizations. I was actually on the student government, the SA Association. I don't know if anyone else is on there. I was also a big member of the speech and debate team. Any speech and debaters here? No. We're actually one of the very, very highly ranked at Binghamton. We're somewhere like 10 nationally. So I'm still a big supporter. It was one of the biggest things that helped me in school. I like to say that I fall back on it now, whenever I'm arguing with a client or arguing internally, and anything in my legal roles. Briefly, I had stints at the Princeton Review's legal department, Mercedes-Benz. I was actually at a very old ad tech company called Viewpoint. I don't know if any of you remember them. Woo! I know you do. But they served ads on AIM as well as Yahoo, if anyone still used AIM. And it was actually one of the first animated ads, the ones on Yahoo when they would open up and animate and you couldn't find where the X was to close it. It was a bit annoying, I have to admit myself. And then I was at a large software company called VMware before taking a year off to travel, and started at MediaMath a little bit over a year ago. So.
All right, great. David?
Yeah, well, first of all, I gotta say, I love doing these cool connections, hot alumni events, because I love being called a hot alumni. So I'm really looking forward to the hot alumni calendar. I've gotten it for October 2016. I think it is great. So thank you to Steve and others that named that and are promoting these events. It was a real feel good, self-esteem booster. So I'm David Berkowitz. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of MRY, not Marine, right? And it's great heading up marketing at an agency no one can pronounce, and let alone heading up marketing in a space that is about as undifferentiated as they get. Ad agencies, it's hard to tell one from the next, so I don't blame you, but we are part of the massive French conglomerate Publicis Group, and so we're under Starcom MediaVest Group, for those who follow the space. Used to be part of Digitas LBI. I saw someone who's the Digitas LBI here. I don't know if they made it tonight, but I saw someone on the list, and so I've been at 360i and iCrossing. I was at Viewpoint actually just a little bit before him, so it's a very small world in this digital marketing space especially. I do want to note, especially for the folks back home, or on campus at least, that I actually got down this rabbit hole of a career path thanks to the Metro Career Night in January 2000, and so when I came there as a pretty directionless student, far more directionless than most I've met over the past 15 years at these events, and I was on the verge of having my psych degree, but not knowing exactly what I do with it, and someone heard that I had started as a fluke, just because I was kind of tired of, at the time, the campus paper politics and pipe dream, that I started this zine, blog, whatever you call it today, in traffic, and I didn't know that had actually given me job skills, and so even though the guy who told me to talk to didn't return my calls, it got me thinking about this whole thing that I really was not considering before, and I got my first job on Monster. The second job through Hot Jobs, dated myself, but it helped that a Binghamton alum at this, who was my TA in a class I took for a gen ed requirement, that was the head of sales there and was actually still there, and a marketer. So it was just very much like my career propelled, thanks in large part to first being one of the first students to take advantage of a lot of these great career development services that they had there, and then working with alumni connections along the way. So it's just, I love, beyond being called a hot alumnus, just love trying to give back in some small way to a university that has helped my career quite a bit.
All right, great. Leah?
Hi there, I'm Leah Gina, and I am currently a senior privacy counsel at the Nielsen Company. Most of you might know Nielsen because of TV ratings, but we're a global information measurement company, and what we do is we basically track consumer behaviors across different platforms, includes what people watch, what people buy, and I handle privacy and data protection matters. So that really includes actually vetting a product from the beginning of the design phase to launch, and the term that the privacy actually and Kabukian had coined, which is called privacy by design. So that's a lot of what I have an opportunity to do, which is really cool because I kind of get to work with engineers and really ensure that product is actually in compliance in different regions where Europe is more of a problem, but it's really a great opportunity. And a little bit about my background is I was at the School of Management, and then I worked with a consulting background and concentration, and so I always feel like I've had the opportunity to take that with me wherever I go. And my team, for a global company, we were 4 lawyers that handle just privacy and data protection, and we're in over 100 countries. So having that background and the skills that I learned at Binghamton are invaluable, and always kind of trying to streamline as much as we possibly can. Granted, things change, and there's always a new product or service. It's not easy to do, but I always felt like the skills that I acquired and learned at Binghamton were extremely helpful in my career and developing my career. So after I went to attended Brooklyn Law, and then did a stint at a legal and policy fellowship at a think tank in DC for a company called the Future of Privacy Forum, where I got to work with companies like Google and Facebook and LinkedIn, and it was also then I ended up at Nielsen, and I actually interned at Nielsen back when I was in law school. So very thankful for my experience and for the fact that I went to Binghamton.
All right, great. And our last hot alum, Elliot.
Of course, thank you very much. I'm Elliot Hoff. I graduated in '91, the year after Gary. Gary and I lived on the same floor together in Delaware, which no longer exists. I don't know how much I'm going to talk about what we did at Binghamton. I don't want to embarrass Gary and his roommate, actually, here as well. But I run the crisis communications practice at the world's second largest private public affairs and public relations firm. It's called APCO Worldwide. APCO actually stands for Arnold and Porter Consulting, Arnold and Porter being the large Washington law firm, where we started about 30 years ago. After a few years, we were bought by Gray Advertising. We became a great global company, and then bought ourselves out about 11 years ago when I started APCO's New York office. And what I do is help companies and countries, actually, we actually have some governments that we work with as well, navigate through very difficult issues. Everything from product recalls to things that explode in the night, to privacy breaches having to do with big data. Really anything that's outside the normal course of business, they will come to me and my team to help them deal with from a communications and a government relations perspective. So we help manage the media, the internal communications, really any way you need to talk about these things. We're usually the folks for our clients who do that, as well as a lot of government relations and lobbying. A very interesting way I got here, after Binghamton, having a really good time, nothing really prominent like the debate team, but we were allowed to drink in the dorms at that time, so it was a whole different world at Binghamton, and there were no computers, which is interesting that this is about big data, because when we went to Binghamton, this is an important point, there was no internet. This was really pre-internet. In fact, Gary and I were talking, when we needed a computer, we would go to the engineering building to use a computer. So it was a very different world that we're dealing with. After Binghamton, I went to law school, and during law school decided I didn't want to be a lawyer. So I started working for Congressman Schumer on his subcommittee on crime and criminal justice, now Senator Schumer, he was a congressman then. and actually got a job as counsel on that subcommittee, but it was 1994 when the Democrats lost control of Congress, so he lost his subcommittee. So I came back to New York and I started working with a nonprofit, the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, doing some legal and some communications work. And at one point they put me on World News Tonight to talk about an issue, and I caught the communications bug and have been doing this sort of crisis communications ever since. My real sort of claim to fame, if you would say, is that my team, we ran the campaign against Mayor Bloomberg's soda ban, and I was the spokesperson against that ban. So that was a really interesting crisis. We worked for the soda companies, to be transparent. They paid us to kill the ban, which we did, which we were very happy about. And I'm very glad to be here and talk about this very critical issue that all of my clients are facing.
All right, very good, Elliot. I'll have a quick sip of soda before.
Please?
That's
That's not
Thanks
big
to
enough.
you.
That wouldn't be enough.
All right, so we're going to be talking about the topic of big data. Before we hop into it, I wanted to show a quick video. My apologies to those of you in the Alumni Center in Binghamton if you can't see this, but let me put it for everyone else. I'm sorry, I got to skip
Nice game,
the
folks.
ad before the
You guys are
ad.
really looking like pros
Yeah,
out
here
there in
we
the
go.
Under Armour gear.
Okay.
Peter, come take a look at this. Look at this. The numbers, they keep getting bigger and bigger.
Clicks are off the charts.
Yeah.
Yoshi, it's Walter. We're back.
I need more trees. More, please. I'll get you more trees.
Hey, take a look at Woodpole.
Everything about football right now.
He really loves that thing.
Okay, so data is everything to companies these days. It really doesn't matter what industry you are in. I mean, we have a lot of people here who are in the marketing communications industry and a lot of alumni in that space, but it doesn't make a difference what industry you're in. Data drives everything in today's marketplace. So we're going to talk a little bit about the collection of data and different uses of data and what are some of the concerns and hot issues in that space today. So we have a number of questions with the panelists that we're going to go through, but then I definitely invite the audience to ask questions and also invite those in the Alumni Center to submit questions that Steve will relay to me. So let's start with the first thing about data collection. As we saw from the video, data is collected everywhere, and people may not realize all the different sources of data. There are so many different platforms and different mediums and devices, and it's coming from everywhere. So let's talk about where is the data coming from and what are the methods used to get that data. And while you can all jump in, maybe I'll be unfair and I'll call on Leah first, since Nielsen, people think TV data, but as we know, there's so much other data out there. Maybe you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so we have our TV panel, but we also have our Nielsen Online. So we have where our panelists would download software onto their computer, and we get to see every single URL they visit and all their browser activity, essentially. We also have a mobile panel where we get the same information. And we also have our software in certain apps where we can then identify and see what their viewing habits are, where, of course, again, with consent. So in all these situations, we get the consent from the panelist. We present them with terms and a privacy notice, and the privacy notice discloses what data that we collect, what data, and how we use that data, how we share that data, whether we transfer it outside of their home country. And these are requirements by law in California, at least in the U.S. The U.S. does not have a general privacy legislation, but that is the case in Europe. So we always have to think a global perspective as we typically expand while there's what will often happen is we'll come to us and say, oh, we just want to start in the U.S. So don't worry about it. But we have to always think globally and try to ensure that we have all the disclosures and also kind of anticipate where the product might go, because what they might say is, you know what, we don't need, or you know, we don't want location, or we don't want to have an app collect photos and like have any hardware functionality. And then next thing you know, they're like, oh, but we have this great idea where they could take photos of a product, and then, you know, that way we could see what people are eating. You know, there's all kinds of different like services, and client, it all depends on what the client wants. So a client might want to see what people are eating. We have another panel where we send out products to people's homes to try it out and then report back to the client. So again, we just have to be as upfront as possible about what we do and really try to get that consent, especially if the information is sensitive, and, you know, trying to identify all those areas that need to be called out specifically with respect to, or it might be more sensitive, like location information that people might have more of an issue with, or situations where we want children to participate, then we need the consent of the parent if the child is under the age of 13. And so we also adhere to market research standards, and in doing so, that also includes notice. And we also provide choice, so we always let our panelists know that they can opt out at any time. So.
Okay, and so, I mean, David, maybe in your role, I mean, you know, in your marketing role, you know, where are you, you know, looking for new data, you know, other sources, you know, I mean, you can get, you know, some standard lists from somebody, may not be valuable, but where, when you think about getting useful, valuable data, what are you thinking about in terms of sources?
Yeah, well, it's a big question, because some of it's related directly to the client work we're doing, and we're working with a lot of brands like Visa, Gillette, Adobe, T-Mobile, and others. So there we're dealing with a lot of data of people who are engaging with the marketing we're putting out there. We're far more on the creative side than the media side of it. So what we're also trying to do, though, is match that with a lot of the data that brands collect on their own, so that we can really track marketing results to business results, generally meaning sales and things like customer lifetime value, stuff like that. That's still often a little hard to connect all those dots, and for brands to be willing to share that reliably with their partners. But there's a lot we're also figuring out so we went from joining a creative group in Digitas LBI that was part of Publicis to a media planning and buying group, Startup MediaVest, and so they have their own proprietary panel called, I mean, they buy access to everything, but they've got their own proprietary panel called the PACE panel that's specifically in a pretty large group of people throughout the day to get their inputs on how are they feeling and what are they buying and all these kinds of things. And so it's trying to see, well, what elements of that are going to be useful for any given client, and the fact is it varies quite a bit for clients for who they're targeting, what campaigns they have in market, and then there's just a lot more we're trying to figure out as far as who is interacting with it and who matters. How much does targeting, say, influencers matter versus just mass markets? And so even in targeting influencers, now the data is pretty solidly out there that it isn't just about reach, it's about who actually moves the needle and does something meaningful for a brand. So there's a lot that we're trying to figure out on that level of, like, down to every single campaign. Whenever a new platform comes out, like Snapchat, we're getting a lot more into, right? There 6 billion video views a day on Snapchat compared to 8 billion on Facebook, and YouTube doesn't quite compare the same metric. It's clearly bigger, but a ridiculous amount of data coming from, 14 billion video views a day from those two platforms alone. And so then what there is meaningful for our brands.
Okay, put this down next. So Jonathan, I mean, your business is data. I mean, you got tremendous data coming in, tremendous data going out, and tremendous data being generated. Maybe you can talk about, the sources and what's being generated and then how it's used, for the targeted advertising.
Yeah, absolutely. We source data from a variety of sources. We have data partners who will give us data that's out there, and it is collected in a lot of the traditional ways that you think of whenever you do a Google search, what you're clicking on, what you're purchasing online, things like that. But the great thing about our product and similar products is that it does learn from campaigns that are being run. So say, for example, an advertiser runs a campaign and it's very successful with males from 18 to 30. It's something that it will learn from that, so we'll continue to target similar products with other competitors and be able to realize what works and what doesn't. But I think that's kind of the big thing about big data, right? It really pulls from everything. And one thing that I also just wanted to mention was that we still pull from traditional pieces of data. So say, for example, you have a membership at a supermarket, right? And you purchase a lot of, you're a very healthy person, you purchase a lot of fruit, you purchase a lot of veggies, things like that. That type of data is also factored in to the programmatic advertising that you're going to receive. So it really is, it's an ongoing thing. We pull data from everything that you do on a daily basis. And I know that sounds a bit scary, but it actually is very beneficial to consumers as well as advertisers.
So, Elliot, maybe you talk about the data uses in your business, because people might think public relations more of an offline world. I'm sure everything you're doing is, analyzing data and deciding what's the right messaging and who are the right people to reach.
Well, inside the business, we use a lot of data. What I find very interesting is how everything, all data, is now available. And I'll give you an example of a client. I'm going to turn your question a little bit because I find this company very interesting. They buy prescription data from Wayne Reed and Walgreens and all of the drugstores all over the country. They take that data, your prescription data, without your name on it. It's anonymous, but it's what you're buying. They take that, they package it, and then they sell it to the pharmaceutical companies for marketing purposes. So it's no accident that more pharmaceutical reps are coming to New York City to sell antidepressants than they are going to some other town where antidepressants are not as popular. So when I started working with this company, and they're obviously very concerned about your pharmaceutical data and my prescription data getting out there, the question was, sort of, how do we prepare for this and how do we prepare for a breach? I mean, I hate to be the Grim Reaper, but that's sort of what I do in my world when companies have these issues. As far as data in my own company, inside APCO, we have our own polling company. It's called APCO Insight. So we compete with Pew Research and others like that. We go out there, we collect data. So I think that I share a lot of the experience they have of where to get data, but I also have a little bit of a different perspective of the breadth of what's being collected that's very, very personal, sort of like the target reach, and how to really prepare for that and respond if that data becomes public.
So, all right, so we're scaring people with all the data collection everywhere in our lives. What do you think about the disclosures to consumers and notice? And we hear regulators talk a lot about giving people notice and choice. And there's a right balance, because you don't need to give people notice of every single thing happening in their daily life. You don't want to be bombarded with disclosure messages every time you simply turn on your phone. So how do you find the right balance in terms of what you collect and what you tell consumers? Maybe Leah can start on that one.
So I think that it's extremely important that we provide upfront notice and we provide the choices. And it's especially, so there's the distinction between when you opt into something and when you're opting out. So a lot of what advertising space has to kind of go through and their stance on, I don't know if you guys heard of do not track, but there's initiative where one basically have one button on a browser that where a consumer can express a preference to not be tracked and not be targeted, not to be served targeted ads on their browser. So the stance is that in those situations you should be able to opt out. So when it's your personal information that's being used, you definitely should. It depends on the situation, I guess. So we're as upfront as you could possibly be in providing opt-in consent. However, in certain situations where, for example, you're collecting aggregated information or anonymous level information, it could just be an opt-out, or all instances you should be able to provide consumers with choice.
Yeah, I mean, we're at this very interesting time where there is so much data available, and there are just so many creative ways to use it, and I think one of the challenges for marketers and others is that I mean, they need to have good counsel, right? Just so some of the most important advice then is, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, and just because something is totally legal and above board now doesn't mean it won't be very soon. I mean, there are some things going on that even as someone who's been in the ad and marketing industry for so long, I mean, it makes me squirm, and I think it's just a matter of time before regulations start clamping down. There's at least a several-year lag period between when the technologies start giving marketers the chance to do something, and then when then it gains mass market acceptance and someone uses it in a very questionable manner, and it makes a Wall Street Journal story, and then the feds start looking into it more, and there's a cycle they keep seeing over that folks like Gary far more than I do. So some of it is like, do you just want to be able to get away with this, versus is this something that, okay, that there's enough consent given, that it's been scrubbed the right way, and I mean, there was a technology came across recently, and where it involves, say, going into a physical location, and it tracks your phone ID, and even if the data itself is anonymized, that's synced up with your Facebook identifier, and then you start seeing ads for that on Facebook, and there's so it's taking this whole being tracked around the web to a new level, because this is, you just have your phone. It's not like you're going to Blue Fly and looking at a pair of shoes. It's you're going into a shoe store and then seeing all these related ads to it, and it starts just pushing the bounds a little bit more and starts taking people out of their comfort levels, and so it's why. But there's also a fine line. I mean, Snapchat's just an interesting area because it's such a work in progress now. I've seen some product marketing through influencers on Snapchat that's just not labeled at all. There's no transparency. But for those who follow the platform, and most under 30 here probably on it, right? That okay, maybe you don't need a disclosure image in every single image or video in a story, but somewhere along the way, just that, like, look, they're paying me to do this, and have something in there that makes it clear that this is on behalf of the brand.
It's usually those click-throughs that nobody reads.
Yes. Let's see a show of hands. How many people know what the ad choices are? Let's see. All right, so I'm going to give a question to each of you now. You can choose which side of the question you want to answer. Two sides of the coin. Positive societal benefits to big data, or negative, creepy uses of big data? Because we hear about both, but they certainly go hand in hand. So I'm going to start with you, Jonathan. You can talk about either something positive you think about big data, or something that maybe makes people a little uneasy about big data.
Sure. Well, since I work in the industry, I'm going to have to talk about positive about big data. I think a lot of people have this immediate, negative tendency to hate advertising. And I think, one thing the message that I always try to get across, especially when I talk about what I do, is that advertising has benefits to everyone. It has benefits to the consumers as well as the advertisers, right? Without advertising, television wouldn't be free. Without advertising, newspapers wouldn't be $1. And without advertising, a lot of the web pages that you visit on a daily basis wouldn't be available to you. And so these are really things that the publishers use to help finance what they're doing. And really with the big data that's out there, rather than seeing an advertisement for something that's totally irrelevant for you, we're now able to target items that are that you would be interested in. Like I notice I see a lot of ads for clothing because I guess I shop on Guilds a lot. But I wouldn't see an ad for Depends, for example, and that's a good thing. So I think it makes the internet experience and really just the user experience a lot more friendly to you. And of course, the benefits to the advertisers themselves are inherent. They're able to target, they're able to serve the ads and pay for the ads with a much higher attribution rate, which means they're able to click, they're able to sign up, they're able to purchase, and they can see, hey, I served 100 ads, and out of 90 of them, I'm giving a big example, but out of 90 of them, people bought something. So I think that's a really great thing about big data.
David, creepy or positive?
Well, I just shared creepy, so I feel like I have to go back the other way. But I mean, what I think is getting fascinating is in this area of in machine learning and things where just you see just some of the use cases of something like IBM's Watson, right? And so it's being able to just mine vast swaths of data to help pinpoint diagnoses and just help all kinds of professionals do their jobs better and rely on machines for the things that machines can do well, like in a split second, just gather and analyze just unthinkable amounts of information and come up with the most relevant even insights based on that. And so as we shift from data to insights, then that leaves professionals in this opportunity to figure out, okay, what to really do about it, right? And what kind of counsel to give based on that. That is a very, it's a very exciting future, and I think we're going to see just a lot more of those benefits coming forward, and it helps that there are enough companies in this space that want to tout their own records based on that. But there are going to be these things where this big data actually can contribute to a better world and not just better marketing.
All right, Leah, creepy, positive, or both?
Well, I think both. I think there's a distinction between the data that you collect versus and how you use that data. So if you could be collecting a lot of data, but again, ultimately it comes out to, are you using it in a nefarious way? And again, that also is all about the relationship between the company and the end user and whether there's trust there as well. I think that there are certainly, if the use what is the line between what a user would expect and when you go beyond that. So just one sort of creepy situation or example I could point to is the Target example. So there was this father who started receiving ads, and these ads were all about how, for basically pregnancy kind of products. So he actually found out that his daughter was pregnant before his daughter told him. And the reason, and so basically based on the inference, Target, using the data that they had made, was able to determine that when a woman switched and started buying this unscented lotion, that was an indicator that she was pregnant. So that's just one example, and again, the father obviously found it creepy. But yeah, again, it's used. When do we cross that line? And Target was just using the data they had and made an inference based on that data.
So there are definitely positives and negatives to big data. I'm not sure of creepy. I think it's annoying. I don't know so much about creepy, but if you look at the example I just spoke about with the prescription data also could help drive positive healthcare outcomes. big data drives positive education outcomes. A lot of strides being made in K-12 education today are because of the collection of data from different groups and ways we're able to sort of look at that data because of technology that could never happen before. So your school is not just your school is now data from the whole country. So there's a lot of positive stuff out there. The negative is less the annoyances and the creepiness, in my opinion. It's when the privacy in the data is compromised. That to me is the real challenge. So when your personal information becomes public or gets in the hands of the wrong people, that's when it even goes from creepy to a little bit dangerous, and that's what companies need to prepare for and have not prepared for well. It took Target and Home Depot and those massive breaches on the front page of the newspaper for other companies to say, you know what, we need to think about this. The same way we need to think about whether we would recall a product. What would happen if we have a strike in our facility? They now need to think of what happens if we compromise data of tens of millions of people around the world. So that's the challenge and the danger of big data.
Okay. I want to ask one more question of each of the panelists, and then I want to open up to questions from the audience and also questions from those of you watching in Binghamton. So start thinking about your questions. What I want to ask now is sort of forward-looking. You know, what are we going to be talking about in 2, 3, 5 years? I mean, Elliot, you and I were talking about how when we were at Binghamton, there were no computers. I think Alan, he had something like Coleco or whatever, TRS-80 or something like that. But yeah, if you wanted to use a computer, you had to go to the engineering building. And I was mentioning to someone else how when I went back to Binghamton after not having been there for about a decade, the oddest thing was to me as I was walking around the campus, seeing everybody on a phone, because that didn't exist when I was there. So maybe we'll start with you, Elliot, as the fellow gray hair. So what are you thinking when you think about data and collection and use and services and risks if you look 3 or 5 years out?
I think data collection will continue and it will grow as technology grows. I think that companies will be much better prepared to handle issues around data. We're starting to see that happen now. Thought is being put into it. A lot of my clients that never thought of this are thinking about it now. We're talking about some of the largest retailers, food companies in the world, and they're really first starting to focus on this. So within a few years, they'll really have plans to deal with breaches of data, and we'll be more transparent about what's going on with data inside the companies. But there'll still be challenges. But the fact is, we can't predict technology. We can't predict what's going to happen in 3 to 5 years. It changes so quickly. But what still will be there is this human element that was not thought about for a long time in data collection. And we need to continue to think about that as people who grew up with the technology, not like us, understand more of what's going on. I mean, if you look at my parents' generation, they don't understand at all about data collection. We understand more. Now everybody's sort of in data collection and on Snapchat. I see, I have an 11th grader working at Binghamton. She's, on all of these platforms that you're talking about. She grew up with it. My 5-year-old knows how to use an iPhone and knows how to use some of these platforms. We didn't. So there'll be much more of a confluence of educated people and prepared companies, which I think is a good thing.
Leah, crystal ball?
So I think that it's going to be harder for users to have choice with the proliferation of internet-connected devices. I think we're going to have you already have smart TVs. Everything's just going to, it's going to be harder and harder to show what and how an internet-connected microwave is using your data and your use. And I think companies are going to have to work and be a little bit more creative to actually provide users with meaningful choice with respect to their data and getting more granular. I alumni. So can they actually choose to opt out of targeting, or are they okay with some uses? Do they want to be targeted in some ways, but do they not want to be targeted in other ways? And I think that Apple and Google have done what they can on their operating systems to sort of enable choice. You have like those privacy settings right now on iOS where you can actually see when certain companies have accessed or what apps have accessed your location in last 24 hours. And so that's one way of doing it. But I think the companies that also have the relationship with the first party company with an end user also are going to have more and more challenges as well.
Oh, well, what gives me hope is akin to what Ali was saying. I mean, my one-year-old literally updated my Snapchat profile picture. She actually turned it into an animated GIF. So if you follow me at D. Berkowitz on Snapchat, you see these images at the top of her head. And I literally did not know how to do this. She just went in on her own. And so what kids are able to start figuring out, I've seen firsthand. And while I haven't had the father-daughter talk to her about big data yet. She will actually probably be talking to me about it because she'll be a lot smarter about it than I am. By the time she's 5, she could probably be on this panel and more eloquent than I've been tonight. What scares me is, well, ISIS. Daesh, I guess, is now the trendy thing to call them, because I hear they don't like that, right? So Daesh, ISIL, as Obama likes to say. And now, you look at Anonymous going after them on through Telegram and saying they're going to go and root them out and give all this information to, well, what may or may not be a really great alternative, rebel army where you don't quite know who's who, and which is our trouble in figuring out who to arm in the first place. But in general, it's like Anonymous says they're going to take down ISIS. Great, right? But what if instead they start taking this a step further, and there are some recruiting sites that ISIS puts up there, and just some anti-Western sites, and Anonymous is able to figure out who's going to them. And some people are going to them just because honestly they're curious about what the other guys, the other side, the terrorists are trying to do. And some of that data gets out there, right? So I think we're going to be going down this rabbit hole where at first what sounds great, well, like, hey, our government doesn't seem to be doing enough against ISIS, so Anonymous, do your thing. I feel like most people will be all for it, but then as you start going down that slippery slope, it gets really, really scary. And I think we're going to see more of those examples, and things like Ashley Madison, that breach being the tip of the iceberg, and so there it seemed to be the case that yes, like Ashley Madison users were the ones who were outed, and that doesn't seem necessarily fair in that circumstance. But what if there are some false positives in that bunch and it ruins people's lives? It's just, we're going to be going through a lot of gray areas in the next few years.
All right, Jonathan, you want to follow up ISIS?
Something more.
I was actually thinking about this earlier today. I think there will be quite a few changes on the regulation side, to touch about what Leah was saying. One of the interesting things, and I'm sure Gary, you have to deal with this too, is that about advertising, about the digital advertising industry, is that it's a mostly self-regulating industry. When as an attorney, that just boggles the mind. Like, wait, we're the advertisers and we have to regulate ourselves. I think, especially when we see everything that's coming out of Europe with the safe harbor, things like that, I think the United States will eventually be rolling out a little bit more, hopefully middle-of-the-road regulation that does allow advertisers to continue to advertise, but do so in a little bit more of a respectful way of privacy. And then just quickly as a product, another article that I read, I think for the next stage of advertising, I read a few places that programmatic television may actually be the next thing. So when you watch whatever you watch at night, your neighbor may be watching a different commercial even though you may be watching the same TV show. And they'll be targeted to your home, to your household.
All right, so why don't we spend the last few minutes with questions, both any questions from the audience and from up in Binghamton? Yes?
I guess this is a question for Elliot. You talked about a little bit about like Leah actually talked a little bit about the asymmetry and kind of your reactionary business, Elliot, and how, I guess when there are security breaches in your business. What's happening on the other end of the spectrum, kind of the retainer-based, more proactive aspects of both privacy and security, and what exciting things are happening there that are assuaging people's privacy concerns and other types of concerns in general?
Sure. So in my field, broadly crisis communications, issues management, there's the reactive part, as you said, the thing goes bump in the night, we're called in the middle of the night, and we deal with that issue. A lot of what we do is try to help companies prepare for different scenarios of what could possibly happen. And more of that is happening in the area of big data. In fact, several of our long-term clients who never looked at this issue are asking us for plans on how to deal with big data breaches. Now, what's good about that is that in the process of helping deal with big data breaches, we get a team of the client together and us together to look at where their vulnerabilities are regarding that big data. And as a result of that, they are actually making proactive changes to make the data more secure. So through this preparation, they are actually making data more secure and taking a more careful look about how they're using data, including in advertising. We're talking about major companies that do digital advertising, and they're actually changing some things they do because of the fear of what could happen if there's a breach. And everyone is looking at the Target breach. The Target breach in my industry was a game changer in big data because Target kept communicating different information out there. They were not doing a good job, and now what most people don't know is that there are lawsuits, there's potential regulation. It could really cost the company a lot, not only because it happened, but because of how they dealt with it. So because of this preparing, really communications and crisis management, they're making real changes on how they deal with data.
Okay, other questions? Yes?
So first of all, thank you for sharing your insights and thoughts with us and for hosting us at this great facility, which I've never been to before, so thank you very much. I'm Stu Burkhoff, class of '93. I know it sounds ancient to some of you, but my question is, or comment is, and then your question. First of all, kudos to the Binghamton Alumni Association, or Gary for you, but great relevant cover story today in the New York Times, front page of the business section, foiling electronic snoops in email, directly related to this. So to build on your question from earlier, there were a couple of quotes in there, right? So there was one from MailChimp, the VP of product there, who said, people want to be spoken to as a snowflake, as an individual, which is why it's important for them to kind of be, watching your emails, seeing what your emails are, reading the content, and sending you related, information on that. And then on the flip side of that was talking about a story of an IT guy who was being pitched a business to invest in something, and he clicked on his email, and 30 seconds later, he got a call from this company that wanted him to invest and said, okay, Big Brother's watching, we saw that you clicked on our email, do you want to invest with us? So curious to get your thoughts in terms of, on the spectrum, what do you think is appropriate? Is it, that people want to be spoken to as these individuals? Is it too much that, we're able to see and say, hey, we saw you click on this email at 10:30 while you were in your pajamas in your bedroom, reading your email. Curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I see this all the time just in the professional context, right? Like if something looks personalized to me, but there's an unsubscribe link on the bottom, I unsubscribe, right? You know, like if it's just some cold call, but it could be the same note that clearly isn't just coming from a Salesforce account, and then I'll give that person the courtesy of a response, even if it's a negative one, you know? So, same thing like when I get pitched something, and if like someone sends me a few slides about it, great. If someone sends me something through ClearSlide, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but I bristle a little bit because I know it's pinging them the second I open this, and I'm sure telling them how many slides I've read and where I am on the deck. And so I'm getting that call 30 seconds later, like, hey, yeah, thanks for checking this out. And I don't want to be I'd rather just watch the stupid video on your site about it, and even if it's not as good. And so I think that of it has to be really clear, but I can't imagine I'm alone and just wanting a little bit of that border around my own private space.
Steve, do we have any questions from Vesco Parkway?
We do. I'm happy to give a question from the audience watching on the webcast. And Gary, this was an area we were talking about in the preparation for this event. And this could be answered by anyone on the panel. What emerging markets or job prospects do you expect to see because of this growth of big data?
All right, the students want to know about jobs.
Well, MediaMath is hiring, so please check out our webpage if you're interested at all. I think it's only going to grow. I mean, you touched upon it earlier. I think Elliot, you touched upon it earlier. People now are growing up in the digital age. They grow up with phones. They grow up with iPads. They grow up with the digital advertising. So so the data stream that's coming out, the data information all the information that's coming out, there's just more and more of it. We're looking, and my competitors are looking for very, intelligent people who are able to derive useful cases from this type of data. I mean, it's big data, right? One person can't read this on an Excel spreadsheet, so we have algorithms that try to pull out, what pieces they can, so that when somebody buys non-scented lotion, a woman buys non-scented lotion, she's likely pregnant. You'll never. These are the types of information that you'll be able to pull. So I think it's only growing. My suggestion, I guess, to current students is my understanding is that we're looking into a big data degree at Binghamton. I think I thought I heard that somewhere, and it's certainly more and more classes that I've seen listed where that's a thing. But if you're interested in this, there's free coding classes online. It's definitely, you have to be involved with computers. Free coding classes online. There's computer camps that a lot of our engineers that I've spoken to worked in totally different fields and then went to like a 12-week boot camp for coders, and now they work for our team. So if it truly is something you're interested in, there's definitely a lot of need and a lot of there's a lot of education out there for you.
Steve, we take maybe one more from up north? Want to take it from here? Okay, yes.
Yeah. Hi, thank you all for sharing with us your insights. It was really helpful. My name is Andrew Horowitz. I graduated in May, so I'm fresh and happy to be here. My question was, I think the big issue that you guys are touching on is the difference between disruption and facilitation, right? Like the ability to target and help someone get the product they want versus target someone and disrupt what they're trying to do on the internet. And my question is, with these targeted ads and with the ability to put the product that a consumer may want in front of them, how do you change their mind space about looking at that ad in a positive light? Like, what do people need to do to understand that marketers are trying to help them buy a product that they really want versus a product that they have no intention of ever purchasing?
So you help them is really the easiest answer there. Or, this is already something that is down the road in the future and something that can be done now, but there are, I could just see it being common where consumers would walk past, let's say just say they're close to Macy's and then they get a Macy's ad pop up on their phone. And then, or it would just be like coupon codes that you could use, and then you're getting the benefit. I think that's the nature of this space, is just that it's just evolving at such a rapid pace. At one point you didn't think that Google should be searching for keywords in your email inbox, but they changed the consumer expectation there. So you just what you've just found is that companies just keep pushing that boundary, then showing you the benefits. And I think at the point at which consumers express that they, again, it's about that fine line. So if you help consumers, then you are making a case that targeted advertising can be helpful.
All right, well, we want to be respectful of time. Let me take one more question before we leave. Yes?
Okay, actually, this is kind of follow up to the question you had earlier in the back. Big data is big, right? So it's great, but it's really big, and Google has already mapped the world. So in terms of job prospects, I think, I'm by the way a computer science graduate of Binghamton University, so alumni, and I think big data science would be great, just a little parenthesis in the middle. My question is, so there are two emerging fields in this big data space. One is indoor navigation, right? If you communicate content to users, push promotions, if you know where they are in real time, which you already mentioned. And the second one is the IoT, the Internet of Things, which you already mentioned also, as pointed out earlier. With IoT, you can sense information, whether it's your house or your car or whatever, and use that information to communicate more valuable content to the user. Why there's no another Google coming out of these ideas? Is it a privacy issue? Is it a technology issue? Or is it a market issue? There's no real demand for it. I'm just wondering, and what's your thought? This is an open question to all the panelists. Please feel free to answer.
Well, a lot of it is the rich are getting richer, right? Google, so Google has Nest as part of it. Apple's working on their own thing with HomeKit. Even stores like Home Depot and Lowe's have their own Internet of Things alliances. So I think it is being done, but just at that very high level. I'm sure there'll be lots of startups that benefit as well. But the big folks out there made a lot of big bets in the space.
Actually, I do want to take one more question from up north. Steve?
For one of our viewers up north on campus, what is your take on the issue of too much data and no widespread industry standard concerning the elimination of irrelevant and outdated information?
All right, for those in the space of the data minimization concepts, who wants to tackle that one?
My take is that companies should be more mindful about deleting information they no longer need, especially where it's your personal information, and have data retention plans in place. I mean, granted, on most privacy policies, you'll see that it just says we'll keep it for as long as necessary and in compliance with law. So you have that broad language. But internally, I hope that companies, again, this is also a security measure that companies could take. So in the event of a breach, if you don't have the data because you didn't need it and you just weren't retaining it, having it stored in your servers for an indefinite period of time, then you've found a way to protect yourself.
Yeah, let me just add one thing to that. Companies are getting pressure, more pressure than ever, to do exactly what the viewer up in Binghamton is asking them to do. And they're getting, when they get pressure from their consumers, and then when that pressure builds, that's when they change. And it's really up to the users to tell the companies, tell the retailers, tell the folks they're getting ads from, what's working and what's not working, because they're listening. For every voice they hear, they're multiplying that. They're saying, well, you know what, if this person emailed me and this person called me, there's 1,000 of this person who feels the same way. What do we need to do about it? Because they're still deciding how they're handling the big data. They're really paying attention to the customer and the consumer, who has a lot more power than they believe in this fight.
Okay. Well, I know we could probably talk about this all night, but I do want to, give people time actually to hang out a little bit here and network a bit. So, just a few closing remarks for 30 seconds. Firstly, thanks to our outstanding, of the panel, very accomplished alumni, and actually, the alumni. And, in the room, we have a lot of accomplished alumni too. So I invite everyone to stick around and network and talk. And since I am on the Alumni Association board, I have to say, to evangelize you a bit, there's about 120,000 Binghamton alumni out there. So they're all over the place, and I really think it's your job to try to connect with them. I mean, it's fantastic for you, for your career. Personally, the school is doing amazing, absolutely amazing, and that reflects on all of us. when the school does well. So I invite you to, seek out your fellow Binghamton alum, tell them you were at an event like this, make sure you connect to them online, connect to our LinkedIn pages, Facebook pages, and Twitter feeds, and really stay connected because there's a lot of exciting things happening on campus and in all of our lives. So thanks very much, and please hang out for a little bit to meet and network with other people. Thanks.